Hello, everybody.
People.
You do that. Hello. Sorry, we're a little bit. We're kind of more or less on schedule, actually, but we always aim to start a bit earlier. So I'd like to welcome everyone who's here to our event today. My name's Michael. I'm program officer here at the museum, and I've been working on the exhibition event and the program of events with our steering group and curators over the last couple of years. Now, I'm just going to describe myself. Today I'm wearing a green corduroy shirt. I'm wearing kind of greyish jeans, brown boots, and I'm a bearded white male with balding strawberry blonde hair. Standing next to my left on the stage is my colleague Anis, who's going to take over from me and kind of run people through what's happening today and then introduce our first event. But I thought I'd just do a little bit of housekeeping and do the welcoming bit. So just to let everyone know, this is the penultimate event linked to our headline exhibition, which is in the space behind everyone. If you haven't seen it, I know most people will have, but there is another event on Monday that everyone is welcome to as well. Or there'll be some music and poetry performance between 1 and 3 o'clock to kind of celebrate the final day of our exhibition, Nothing About Us Without Us. As part of the schedule for today, there are a few breaks programmed in between events. So there's enough time for people to go out and use the cafe, use the toilet, and come back into the space. We always try to make these events as informal as possible and as a chance for people to kind of have conversations as well as listening to some interesting speeches and performances. There's nothing we could have done about the sunlight today, although it's rare that the sun is shining in Manchester in October. Just to let you know, there is an accessible toilet in this space behind everyone to the left-hand side away from the stage. And there are toilets on this floor by our info desk as well that are accessible. We also have a quiet room by our info desk if anyone would like to use it. And we also have an additional quiet space in our coal store as well today. Last couple of things before I pass to Anis. It's a free event. If people can donate afterwards, that's always appreciated. But we understand that money is tight as well at the moment. But there are kind of cash points around the museum, and it kind of helps to kind of fund future event works for us. And just the final thing on our exhibition that's closing on Monday, I just wanted to kind of, because I know there's a few people who've been quite involved in the project over the last few years who've helped to develop it. And one of those things we've always talked about is having a legacy aspect to that exhibition. And just to update, that one thing that we've managed to do in the last couple of weeks is we've had a 3D scan done of the entire exhibition. So there will be a digital version available within the next couple of weeks of the exhibition that incorporates every object in every section and incorporates all the kind of different accessible formats that are available within the exhibition already online. So there'll be an audio narrated version of it linked to the 3D scan. There'll be a BSL version of it linked to the 3D scan. All the large prints and the easy read documents will also be there as well. So that feels like a good kind of ending and a next step from us. So I just wanted to let people know about that. Without further ado, I'm going to pass to Anis, who's going to compare today, who's going to talk you through the schedule and what's happening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for the great news, Michael. I was going to speak to Michael and Mark today at some point about the 3D scans. That's amazing. And for those of you who don't know what the 3D scan is, it's where you can go online and you can use arrows and circles to see a physical space without being there in person. I used it when I was looking for somewhere to live in Leeds, and it was amazing. So my name is Anis Akhtar. My pronouns are they or any. I'm a 5'4" British South Asian, and I'm a long cane user, and I have a t-shirt with a brightly coloured penguin on, grey jeans and black shoes, and in my arm I have Izzy the intersex red panda, who's wearing the disabled and intersex flag, and we are both featured in the exhibition. I'm going to introduce some of my support team here today, and then Michael will go around and give you a lay of the land because we've got some stalls here. So to my left we have Prettyful Pam, who is a BSL interpreter. Then we have adorable Alex, who is the tech person. And then somewhere in the room, who I can't see, is either Tony the Tiger or Tasty Tony, who's also a BSL interpreter. So if you'd like to go around, Michael, and let the stalls introduce themselves.
Start with, would anyone here like to introduce themselves and just say what your stall is and what you're doing here today? Yeah, do you want to?
Hello everybody, my name is Jen. I'm here with Emmy and Alex, and we are here. Our stall is the Changeling Collective. The Changeling Annual is a collection of work by neurodiverse creatives, and it is all accessible for people aged 8+, because Emmy noticed a gap in the market that there weren't opportunities for children's writers and artists to get their work published. It's based on people around the world. All of the contributors are from all around the world, and all of the money that is made goes back into creating further editions and allowing more creatives to have their work published. Jen uses they, them pronouns. I'm 5'5". I've got brown curly hair, white skin, and I'm wearing brown overalls. Emmy is 5'2", white, and uses she, they pronouns, has just shoulder-length hair in a dark blonde colour with a pink fleece and purple overalls. And Alex has ginger hair, white skin, and is wearing orange overalls over a blue t-shirt. We also have stickers and pronoun pins available to fundraise for the annual. So if anybody is looking for any LGBT merch, hit us up. We look forward to speaking to you, and I'll pass over to the next stall.
I don't want to pass it on. Hi everyone, I'm Hel Spandler. I'm here with Asylum magazine, the Radical Mental Health magazine. I don't know how to describe myself. White, wearing a stupid bandana and a very too hot woolly jumper. And so I'm here to sell Asylum magazine, and also to with my colleague Tam. I'm going to pass on to who's part of our Madzines project and Hope in the Heart.
Hello, I'm Tam from London, and as Hel said, I'm here representing Hope in the Heart, which is a social enterprise run in South London but covering the UK. We do workshops for people with all kinds of lived experience, free workshops where we invite people to come along and share messages that they would like to give to people in power, and then we run exhibitions using artwork that those people have created. I'm also part of the Madzines research project, as Hel mentioned, and some of my zines and also zines made by people in our workshops are here for people to come and have a look at if they'd like to. I am 5'3", I've got greying brown hair, and I'm wearing a navy blue top with blue flowers and green leaves.
Thank you all. I'll pass on to the next stall. Rick, are you happy to say something?
Hello, I'm Rick Burgess from the Greater Manchester Coalition of Disabled People today. I'm a short hair, white person with wearing black. Pronouns are he and they. At the table we've got a few flyers if you want to join the coalition. There's also information about our ticket office campaign and the Disabled People's Manifesto, which was agreed here 3 weeks ago. And we've also got information about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Disabled People, which is an important campaigning aim in this election season. But anything else, come over and ask. We're a DPO that covers all of Greater Manchester, but actually we don't mind people from outside of Greater Manchester joining as well. We're very nice to them. We don't hold it against you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rick. I'll now pass over. There's 2 more stalls at the back of the room here. I'll just pass 2, and then one further one to the left-hand side of the stage.
This is on. Hi, I'm Steve Graby. I am the Access and Inclusion Worker at the Archive Project of GMCDP. So we are the Disabled People's Archive. Luke, who's next to me, and I, and Ella, who's not here right now. I am white, non-binary. I'm about 5'10", I think. I've got longish, curly brown hair and a short beard, and I'm wearing a black T-shirt with the logo of Greater Manchester Coalition of Disabled People on it. Luke, I'll let you do yourself.
Just to talk slightly about our stall. So if you want to come and have a look at what we have, we've got a selection of posters, photos, magazines, and conference reports covering a lot of material which would now be illegal under the Police Crime and Sentencing Bill from last year. So if anyone wants to relive a time where you wouldn't get thrown in prison for a long time for blocking a bus, please come and engage in that nostalgia here. As Steve said, we are an archive based at Manchester Central Library, but controlled entirely by disabled people. So an all-disabled staff team, a steering group of disabled activists who basically tell Steve, I, and Ella what to do. And so if you are interested in disabled people's history, or even in how disabled people-led heritage projects are run, then we will be absolutely delighted to talk to you. If you need to find me and need to know what I look like for any reason, I have short curly hair, short beard, glasses, and I'm wearing a red button-down shirt and claret trousers.
Hi everybody, my name's Joanne Taylor. I'm with Salford DPAC, and I'm here raising awareness about my petition to restore the 100% grant to the Disabled Facilities Grant in housing associations. I've also come with my placards that I had when I was demonstrating with Manchester DPAC at the Tory conference. And I've got leaflets. I've got a leaflet about my petition as well, where you can scan the QR code to sign my petition. I've got some merchandise, DPAC merchandise, that you might be interested in. And my pronouns are she and her. I'm wearing a black and white DPAC t-shirt and the DPAC cap. And that is it, basically. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Joanne. I'll just pass to our last stall, and then we'll pass back to Annis.
Hello, my name is Colin Stewart. I've kind of snuck on here, because I wasn't meant to be on the stall. But I've written a novel called Flid about my friend who's a thalidomide survivor. And I haven't actually brought any novels to sell, because I didn't think I had a stall. But I've got lots of pictures here telling you about his life, and lots of things to talk about as far as he's had a very, very interesting life, and I'm happy to talk about it. I'm 5'7", more or less, blonde hair, and I think I'm wearing mostly blue, but I am actually colourblind a little bit. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Anne Plumb. I have here 2 archive collections that have been loaned to the archive section of the Central Library in Manchester. They're loaned for 25 years. First one is these are catalogues that they've been produced by an independent publisher. Okay, thanks. An independent publisher, Tony Baldwinson, who's also an activist as well. And these 2 archives are now with loaned to the Central Library in Manchester, like I say, for 25 years. The first one is Archive of a Grassroots Activist, the Ken Lum collection. So Ken Lum was a disabled activist. The other one is Ear to the Ground, Survivor, Service User, MAD Identified and Allied Voices, Organisation and Action in the UK, 1971 to 2010, catalogue of a personal archive collection. So it's just if anyone wants to, they're both the printed, just the catalogue, but there's also some slides from a talk I did a few years ago to the Unofficial Histories group. So I'm white woman, grey hair, grey jeans, black and white striped top with butterflies and a checked shirt.
Thank you, Anne. And I'll pass back to Anis now.
Yeah, thank you everyone and for bearing with us. I think it's important to give all the stalls that time and space, and just as a disclaimer, not all blind and visually impaired people like the audio description, but we took a conscious decision to do that just to cover the basis. And as always, was one of 4 curators, so I always thank Ruth, Alison and Hannah, who were also curators. And I also wanted to mention that we have the big cheeses of the museum here at the back as well, which is taking their time on a Saturday to come to this event. And before we kickstart this event, I just want to highlight that in Bradford and Leeds today, there are peaceful protests for trans, non-binary, intersex rights because of the horrible attitude by the British government towards an attack against the LGBTIQAP+ community. So I know many people in this room, at work, across our networks, out there on YouTube, would like to show their support and solidarity and be at these events, but that's the world we live in. So I wanted to plug these 2 events happening in Bradford and Leeds this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my friend Dennis Queen, who goes by they, and our guest speaker today for this first session, Dolly Sen. Thank you. Do you want to come on stage?
Thank you very much, Anis. And once again, welcome everyone to the People's History Museum, or welcome back if you're on a return visit. Hello, Dolly.
All right.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm very, very happy I've finally got to meet you, Dennis. You know, we've known of each other for probably a couple of decades, maybe. Yeah, and not met each other, but, you know, the universe wasn't ready for us meeting, but it is ready for us to meet now.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So I'm Dennis Queen, like Anis said, and today I'm going to be talking to the amazing Dolly Sen. And I've had to avoid asking you too many things when I met you today.
Yes.
Because as a friend of mine always says, you don't want to do the interview before the interview.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been really excited to talk to Dolly today, especially for anyone that doesn't know of Dolly and Dolly's work, which is just incredible. So welcome, Dolly.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to quickly describe myself because I forgot. I'm a white power chair user with brown hair, I think, at the moment, and glasses. And I'm wearing a T-shirt designed by Ernest, which is from the Dan reunion protest in 2022. And it says, "Our lives are not disposable." So, and I'll pass over to Dolly to describe yourself.
I'm Dolly Sen. I'm a brown person with vitiligo and colourful tattoos. None are offensive, I don't think. I'm wearing burgundy jeans. I'm wearing a t-shirt, a black t-shirt with white text saying I section the DWP. I've got dark hair, dark glasses, a mischievous twinkle in my eye, and an arse that doesn't quit.
You really do have a mischievous twinkle in your eye.
I do, yes.
It'd be the easiest way to recognise
Yes.
you in a busy room. Dolly, actually, can I start by asking you a bit more about your T-shirt? Because it does, Dolly's T-shirt says, I sectioned the DWP, which I think is very funny, but I wonder if you could start by telling us about the background to that T-shirt.
Okay. A few years ago, luckily enough, I got funding from a Manchester organisation called Futures Venture. They fund radical work that nobody else will fund, and they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I would like to do something with the DWP because they are killing disabled people. And I had to think very long and hard of what I was going to do. So I chose to do 2 interventions at the DWP headquarters in London. One which was just a silent protest where we held big red hearts with the names of people who died because of DWP policies. For example, Mark Wood and Jodie Whiting and so many others. And that was just a peaceful event. And we had lots of local London disability groups, campaigning groups there. And then I thought, I need to do something that's a bit more radical than that as well, because that was more of a kind of like a vigil thing. I thought, I'm going to section the DWP for being dangerous to itself and others. So what we did, we got a few people together in white coats and stethoscopes, went to the DWP head office, and I had a stethoscope, and I put my stethoscope to the building to see if it had a heartbeat. It didn't. So therefore, I thought we're going to section the DWP. And basically what we did, we had a tape, a yellow tape that said section 136, which is a police power to take somebody away from a public place if they're deemed mad, basically, and put into a place of safety. That's a laugh, but that's another issue. So basically, we taped the front of the entrance, and people couldn't come in or out. We didn't know they had a side entrance, so we split up into 2 groups and blocked both entrances. I made a film about it. It's in the actual exhibition if you want to see it. And we just basically refused to move. The DWP didn't like this. They called the police on us. But luckily enough, we had already done what we wanted to do, and we were heading off home, and the police officer came up to me and said, what are you doing? And I said, basically, we are a group of disabled people and families of those who've died thanks to DWP policies, making a point about being in a country where disabled people are bullied into suicide or starved to death. We don't think that's right. And she went, okay, you can go, which was disappointing for the DWP. I could see they were crying. But so yeah, a lot of my work is, I think I try to be impactful and humorous in some way, even though, you know, if you see the bits of the film, there is some humor there, but actually it's actually showing the world there is absolutely devastating pain connected to that building. So that's what I did. I sectioned the DWP. A few mad people didn't like that I, you know, they said, you know, you're kind of making fun of sectioning, but actually that wasn't the idea at all. It was just an idea to kind of stop the DWP in its tracks, and we only stopped the DWP in its tracks for about 15 minutes. We knew. Oh, you're right, Dennis.
Yeah, I'm just throwing tea around the stage.
I understand.
It's one of my special talents.
Yeah, I like breaking things accidentally. So yeah, like I said, I didn't expect to change DWP policy, but I'm going to always be a thorn in their side. And whatever I do art-wise, and whatever any activist or artist does, is to provide evidence. that we didn't live in in a land where, history is not written by the communication department. So that's what I did, basically.
That sounds like a really exciting and powerful piece of civil disobedience there. I'm glad you got that side door. Sneaky side doors.
Yeah, we wondered why people were walking around the building with, hold on a minute, they've got a sneaky side door. So yeah, there was like, you could see some of the faces of people who wanted to go in going, oh, what do I do now? They don't expect, the other thing in the first action I did was I had a red heart and I said to the people going in, can you sign off the next DWP death? Nobody could look me in the eye. And I said, why aren't you looking me in the eye? And that's the thing. I'm not making their right to hurting people comfortable. That's basically one of the reasons I did it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose that's why the building is so important as well as the staff, because these are the polite faces of murderers, people who are trying to kill us.
Yes.
And I suppose just in case anyone hasn't worked it out, there is a bit of a trigger warning around today's conversations. We're going to be talking about some really difficult topics, but at the same time, and hopefully we'll always keep that in the context of how powerful it is to be fighting back against institutions that do this to us. And like you say, not letting them be comfortable. They're used to hiding in their little offices, nice and safe, far away from the decisions they make that affect our real lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
So how that was going to be my next question, really. How did staff that worked there react to what you were doing?
Mostly they couldn't look me in the eye, even though I moved my face and my eyes to look them in the eye. They couldn't do it. And I said, why can't you look me in the eye? If you're doing just perfectly okay work, why can't you look me in the eye? Why can't you look Joy Duff, who lost her daughter, Jodie Whiting, because her benefits stopped and she took her own life? Why can't you look her in the eye? Why are you going into the building to do more of this stuff and not look us in the eye? In the end, they just try to not engage. But they were going to engage whether they liked it or not, The security guards, bless them, they think they can outsmart people who've been doing this quite a while. But one of the things I tell people, I'm not as cruel as this, but I did love that I made a security guard cry at the sectioning. I'm sorry, I do have a wicked streak as well. But they were trying to bring out the steel crowd control barriers and stuff like that. I said, there's only like 5 of us. We're not even a crowd. We're more of a tourist party, So it was, yeah. They kind of overreacted and it made them look stupid, basically.
I think they always do look stupid when they're being made to face us off and the absolute lack of threat that we really are. I always call those a pig pen, by the way, because the police use them a lot
yes.
to kind of put us inside. So, yes. And putting 5 of you in there, I mean, it's hardly worth putting the barriers up, is it?
Yes. We kind of just, as they put out the first barrier, we just walked around it. We're not going to stick to your script and just stay where we are. We're going to just move out of it. It's like, a few times I've heard PCSOs say, don't move while the police come. I say, I'm moving, bye-bye. It's, don't, make us, we're going to not listen to you, basically.
Yeah. Well, and again, the sort of key point on a protest like this is that you're not allowing business as usual to continue. The business of which in the end is proving fatal for some of our people.
Yeah.
And I think this is why, obviously, that I myself, I'm always happy to take part in a good civil disobedience. But as well as, you know, there's so much quiet lobbying we do. There's so much negotiation we do. We've got so many activists working so hard to change things in so many places. But sometimes we've got to get in there and make sure business as usual does not happen. You know, yeah. So that's just such an amazing protest. Yeah. And also having Joy there with you. What was that like, bringing Jodie Whiting's mother
Joy
with you?
said she was about to give up her fight until I contacted her, and she said it reinvigorated her fight. And she's, you know, it was the first time she came down to London for a very long time, a few decades. And she said, "You have opened so many doors for me." And it was not just her, because I contacted a few other families, and they said, "Thank God you're doing this for us. You know, we want our stories told. We want our children." It was mostly I spoke to parents. Lives not just disappear into the ether. We want you to do this. I mean, a lot of the parents were like, you know, had a lot of health issues and couldn't go down to the headquarters, but I could. So I did it on their behalf. But yeah, you know, I have a friend in Joy and her family. I love her to bits, and she loves us to bits. And what basically has come out of it is that this is why some protests like that is good, because we now know neither of us are alone now. We have each other, and we'll always have each other. So yeah, what I hope to do in a lot of my work is to be a courage teacher, because a lot of this is quite scary, and to kind of teach people that that you do have the courage. It might be very difficult, but you do have it. Because when you're fighting alone, it's really hard. When you know that people have got your back, then you're a little bit empowered. So yeah, she's an amazing woman, and she has taken the government on and the law on, and is getting there slowly. But that's the way they like to smother dissent, is to do it very slowly and kind of crush you. But she's even more feisty than she was before. So, I love her basically.
You must have really helped fire up her fight, and the same from her to you. Yes. That is so powerful as a story. And do send love from everyone here, because fights like the one Joy is taking to make sure that Jodie Whiting's death is not forgotten is so important. And like you say, because it's so slow, it's easy for no one to notice. But that's one of the things, though, isn't it, as well, with protest, is the community building that it does. And that's, it sounds definitely what was happening there.
Yes.
Can I ask you a bit more about what you said just now about being, did you say a courage teacher? What is that? Is that all right? What does that mean?
Well, believe it or not, when I had my first psychosis when I was 14, and basically hid in my bedroom for the next 16 years, too scared to do anything. And people will say, come out, come out, come out. I didn't listen to them. It's only people like me who I saw were doing stuff. And at the time, it was mad pride, were quite prevalent. And they were my courage teachers. I saw them and I thought, I can do that. I should do that, It's about having a role model that looks like you and acts like you. I don't think there are many people like me in the world, but yeah, they were mine. So, and I know I'm doing that now, because when I meet young mad activists, they get a bit starstruck, which is stupid, because all they need to see me is get dressed in the morning to know how I shouldn't be on a pedestal, but they have got strength from and courage by watching the people go before them. So, I'm sure you have done that to other people as well. And a lot of people in this room have done. I can do that. I have the courage to do that because it's been done by these people. So yeah, it's like I took from Mad Pride and I'm giving to younger activists. And then actually I think the kind of regarding mad activism, there is a revival, and it's in the young people, which I'm really happy about. I dropped my water, but I had a lid on it, so I'm okay.
Oh, you made less mess than me. You are so far losing the throwing things competition.
Don't worry, there's time.
Slow build up, huh?
Yeah.
It's really important what you were saying, though, about having role models. Like, we've had role models ourselves as activists that have helped us kind of come to the collective fight. Because, like you say, fighting on your own is so hard. It's so full of despair. And yet there's so much power when we work together. And that's when we start really achieving things, I guess. So I'm going to just move the conversation over slightly to your filmmaking, because I watched for the first time one of your films the other day. I watched, I think, Inside, which was just a beautiful film, and I wonder if you'd tell us a bit about that film and what it's about and how. Sorry, I'll ask you further questions in a minute. But.
The film is basically I'm trying to make a trilogy of films on my personal experience of psychosis. So I did one called Outside, and it was just seeing somebody experience psychosis from the outside, basically, just walking down the street. Inside is more to do with because I'm a voice hearer, I hear voices, and for a long time it was a lot of negative voices. And at some point, I realised those voices were the voices, because I have been abused as a child, of my abusers, but also of the racism I experienced as a child, to the kind of all the different discrimination I've experienced. Because you're told as a brown person growing up in 1970s London, you're shit. And basically the voices were carrying on that conversation. But at some point, I started to kind of say, hold on a minute, this is... I just kind of basically started to question what I was hearing. And so that the film kind of looks at the experience of having negative voices being interrupted by a more positive voice, basically. So I don't know when I'm going to do the third one, because filmmaking is quite an expensive endeavour. So whenever that happens, and that one's going to be called Doorway. Yeah.
I mean, I am also a voice hearer, and in fact, when you were talking about role models, when I had my first psychotic episode, I got a lot of support from Dave Lupton, also Colin, who's here somewhere. Hello, Colin. Do you remember that? When I was just a baby activist. But Hearing Voices Network was one of the places that you two gave me information about, and it really helped. And being influenced as a young activist and being supported to use alternative systems at that time was so important to me. So actually, I didn't expect to talk about this, but thank you, darling, while I'm here. But what I wanted to say about your film is, so as someone who also has similar experiences, I just thought it was incredible the way you managed to depict what that's like, I suppose, from the inside, which is what you're trying to show. And I wondered what other people with similar experiences have said to you about it, and how they feel it reflects, or maybe doesn't reflect, the sort of experiences we all have.
It's actually very hard to make films about psychosis and get them widely shown, because people have a kind of a very distorted view of it. I mean, I did submit it to quite a lot of film festivals, and they said it's not the thing they want. And when I see the films on psychosis they show, it's not done by people who've experienced this. It's pandering to a stereotype. But on the other hand, I have had people say, this is the only film I've seen that has talked to me about my experiences. And also people who've only got negative voices at the moment said, you've given me hope, which is, a good thing to be able to give to people. So yeah, it's, I realise I can't really show that film to a mainstream audience and people don't get it straight away. But nonetheless, that film has, I think, maybe hopefully opened the doors a little bit to kind of, I know there are a few good films about psychosis, but yeah, I think there definitely needs to be tons more, because what's around as an alternative is absolutely rubbish. And you're talking about the negative voices. It's not, you don't have to experience psychosis to have negative voices. If you're disabled and been told you're less than, you're going to absorb it at some point. You're going to internalize it. So that's why I think it's always important to try and scramble and find a voice that will kind of make those voices look stupid, basically. And so those voices aren't your truth. You'll find your truth elsewhere.
Do you know what you said, though, about making them look stupid? That's a technique that worked the best for me. Yes. And I think either Colin or David said to me, when you hear the really scary voices, try and remember it's just really a pathetic little fart trying to frighten you. And it was such a powerful way to think about it, to turn the whole idea on its head. Yeah. And get control back.
I've used that as well. So, for example, you're shit, you should die. I just kind of trying to master voice with, you're shit and you're going to die. It's not as effective. So, it's there are lots of techniques actually, available if you don't know about it and want to use them. The Hearing Voices Network has lots of resources online and stuff like that. But lots of other places have as well. But yeah, that's also, anything that you feel disempowered by, just give it a silly voice. It really shows the stupidity of it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, what you were alluding to before, that as disabled, so talking in a wider sense, as disabled people in general, a lot of us have got these kind of internal, monologue about how terrible we are or how broken we are, or some of the things we've heard, some of the impressions that society gives us. And yeah, I mean, it's just the best technique. What you can't stop, laugh at, I guess. So I think that's probably something all disabled people in general can relate to, because this is, again, about where coming together is so powerful. When we come together and start to realize we're not stupid, we're not broken, we're not, there's nothing missing, and that actually we're really powerful when we come together, like when you took over the DWP. Yeah.
I'm looking to take over a few other places, but let's say about that, the better.
Can I come, though?
I'll let you know, yeah. I talked to Colin about one idea, but I'll let you in on that idea. But yeah, I also told Colin I need minions, because there's not enough of, do you need
Can I be a minion?
No, I think you need minions as well, I think.
Minions.
Yeah, because there's too many things I want to do, but I don't have the time or energy or the lifespan now in my 50s to do it. Minions, I'm going to put ad out on Disability Arts Online. Look out for it if you're interested.
I think that's a great idea. So, yeah, thank you. And also, what was it like so the film, when I watched Inside, it was made so beautifully. You could tell it had been made with all the proper tech. It had been really nicely filmed. You had an amazing lead actor in it. And other actors, and Indigo was in it. Yes. So I know Indigo's mum. I'm like, that's Indigo. So you have wonderful actors in it. And what was it like doing that part of it, the actual filmmaking process?
I did my degree in my late 30s in film, and I had a few teachers who stayed in contact with me afterwards. So Sal Anderson, who was my producer, has been my producer. She was one of my teachers, and we stayed in contact, and she says, I'm going to help you make these films. So actually the crew were current students of a London School of Communication. It is cheap labour, but they wanted to do it. It helped. Well, they first of all they helped them understand psychosis better, but also they liked the experience of working on something like they first, when they started, didn't think it was important, but what was important by the end of it. So basically, we used the equipment from the uni, the students from the uni, and I kind of asked friends to be actors, or daughters or friends to be actors. And still, it was quite an expensive. This is a problem with filmmaking. It's not an accessible tool for most people because it's expensive. But yeah, luckily I had that opportunity, and we filmed in the uni as well. So now she's left. It's not so easy. She's retired. So I'll have to look at other routes to make the third film. But yeah, it's really interesting because I think if you're a filmmaker with psychosis, that's a different kettle of fish as well, because when you're a writer, you can be by yourself. When you make art, you can be by yourself, but filmmaking is such a group activity, and if you're hearing voices or you're paranoid, it affects how you make films. So I've learned the better way to do it, and I've taught any crew I've worked with what is helpful. I mean, this sticker is, I wish I had that idea then, what's a good day, what's a bad day to approach me. I would have used it, but there's hardly anything about filmmakers with psychosis around. And that, that's one thing Sal and I have continued to do. We've written a chapter about it for a book. She wanted me to do a PhD in it, but I'm too old to do a PhD now. So what I've got instead is arm patches and a plastic pipe. People think I've got a PhD.
Tell me about the sticker. So you've just mentioned the sticker that you're wearing. So what I can see is that you've got a green round sticker, like a green spot. What does it mean? Tell us about it.
Well, I didn't know what it meant until about an hour ago. But basically, it's to show, it's a kind of like traffic light system. So if you wear a green, you don't mind people coming to you to have a chat. I think amber, I could be wrong, amber means that ask me if I'm ready to talk or to have a chat with you. And red means I can't interact at the moment. So that's a really good idea. And I'm glad I've got something like this to take back when I do other projects. Because I do like people sometimes, but there's days where I can't stand to see another human being. But those it would be really helpful to have a red sticker. But yeah, it's little things like that are quite helpful.
Yeah, they are. Did you get that on one of the stalls today,
I
Dolly?
got it as I came into this room.
Oh, is it on the reception table?
Yeah.
They're there.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So if anybody else wants a sticker, they're actually near the entrance to this room on your left as you're leaving. So, yeah.
I'm happy for anyone to come talk to me, by the way. I do have the sticker, but I'm telling you, if you want to have a chat with me, that's fine. I won't tell you anything I'm going to do illegally, though. And I love your patch on your knee, which says, "Every breath is vengeance."
Yes.
Yes.
Because
that's what I always, whatever I do, I always think on my deathbed, will I look back on what I did with pride? And so, my every breath will, I was going to swear then, but I just reined myself in just in time. Every breath is going to be a torment to those who want to hurt other people.
I think that's wonderful, especially as we see so much pain among our friends. Take the pain, turn it into useful energy, pass it back on to where it belongs.
Yeah, I'm writing a book, well, not a book, it probably won't be more like a scene, how to channel rage into creativity and action.
I'm so excited. That's like literally my life. But it's useful
I realised
fuel.
I didn't think I would mature, but I have in my older age. Well, I'm not old. People say I'm not old, but I feel like, I'm in my 50s now. I have matured a little bit, only a little bit. But I've learned a lot of lessons about stuff like rage, because rage nearly consumed me, it nearly killed me. But it can't do that anymore because I found out ways to work with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So with our last 5 minutes or so, I'm going to bring us back to the exhibition that we've got here today. And not looking forward to saying out loud that obviously we're celebrating that it's going to be closing. And it's been amazing. But Dolly, so I wanted to ask you about, so you have artifacts in the exhibition. Would you tell us about what you've got in the exhibition, please?
I've got 2 things in the exhibition. One is the film Broken Hearts for the DWP, which is I think about 13-minute documentary about my political action at the DWP building. Joy Dove is in it. So you basically see what we did there. I also have got a red collecting charity can that says Help the Normals on it. And it's a charity that hasn't really got off the ground yet because really I try to get assistance dogs. Vince Laws offered his dog to be the first one trained, but yeah, those are the works I have in the exhibition.
And they're amazing. And am I right that we can watch the whole film as well during the exhibition? How long is it?
I think it's 13 minutes. I could be wrong. It might be a little bit more than that, but it's definitely less than 20 minutes.
That's amazing. Thank you. And yes, I mean, that's something I've seen mentioned as an activist. That particular action is one I've seen mentioned so many times. And it's partly, and we'll be talking more about this later, it's partly because it helps record what's actually been happening, which is really powerful work. Especially as, like you say, the establishment wants us to look away and pretend we're not noticing. And always worth remembering they're doing it on purpose, of course, because that's what I was going to say earlier. We can spend a lot of time doing awareness raising, but I think that's not really what this kind of action is about. It's not about awareness raising. It's about getting in the way of the establishment, as well as all the other work that we do, of course, in activism. So, Dolly, we'll be talking to you as well in the panel after the break. But what I wanted to ask you, just while you're up here, and I've got you to myself, is yes. What are you, apart from the secret things that you can't tell us about, and apart from collecting minions, which I will totally volunteer for,
great.
What have you got coming up, and how can we support you?
Okay. Usually when people ask me that question, I go, I don't have a great memory, so I wrote down what I'm going.
Oh, amazing.
Which is very much needed, but I'm making DWP dolls. So they look like, well, they are the Barbie rip-offs you get from Poundland. I've basically turned them into DWP dolls. So there's a doll that's in a coma. There's a doll that's who's terminally ill. There's a coffin in a doll box, and there is someone with multiple conditions. It is tongue-in-cheek, and there is humour to it, but it's also to show what is happening. That's a commission thing. I'm doing something actually quite mainstream as well, and I'm working with hospital rooms, which brings art into psychiatric units, mental health units. But I said, do you know who I am really? Do you know what kind of work I do? Are you sure, 100% sure you want me to?
Did they look you up?
They said, that's why we asked you.
Amazing.
So basically I'm talking to inpatients at the moment, what would they like to see? And it will be subversive. Otherwise they could just ask, somebody else. Yeah, I am basically doing lots of little things that will build up to me probably spending a bit of time in prison, but I don't mind, to be quite, because I've done stuff in prisons. It's not as bad as some travel lodges, and I'm also putting out 3 books of survivor writing of people who've been in the mental health system and their experiences of misogyny. That's book 1. Homophobia, transphobia, all sorts of kind of queer phobia in the second book. And the third book is people's experiences of racism and anti-Semitism in the mental health system. That's probably, hopefully, by the end of the year will be out. And I've got other stuff, but it's more kind of just arty than protesty. But even then, all my art is protest, I think. You know, for example, next week I'm showing my film again in London, and then coming back up to Norfolk to do a performance where I perform my life as a series of side effects. So yeah, I'm going to offer people some lactated psych med lactated milk, but it ain't really. It's just the label just says that. Should have bought some for you guys, but sorry, I didn't have the time.
That sounds amazing. And yes, all your work sounds like resistance, whether it's more arts-based or whether you're doing a civil disobedience. And Dolly, just thank you so much for talking to us today.
It's so lovely being here in Manchester. I love Manchester. I should really move here, but
yeah.
But I've got a partner who doesn't like Manchester, but is indifferent. But yeah, one day maybe I will maybe do a residency here.
That would be incredible.
Like an unwanted one. Like, do you have a building?
Just do it anyway.
Do you have any buildings? Do you have like Atos here and stuff? I could do a residency in the reception area, unwanted.
You know, just across the road.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't say where, but just across the road. Yes, I think there's one of the buildings where they do assessments, isn't there? Yeah, I'm seeing nods. So, is there anyone in the room who's had assessments over there?
I don't. Let's do more unwanted residencies. That's what I say.
Oh, well, I think Manchester would always welcome you to do an unwanted but welcomed protest.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been, if you tell people I've been commissioned to do this, speak to somebody higher up, you'll find out. By the time they finally know that it's rubbish, you would have done, maybe some interpretive dance or poetry or punk music, whatever.
That sounds amazing.
Why don't we do a gig there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could do a bit of stand-up. You could do music. Colin can do interpretive dance.
Oh, Colin, I would love to see you doing the dancing out the front.
Yeah.
Your dancing is the best.
Yeah.
Will any of you come if we do it? Yeah. See, look, we've already got an automatic audience. We are sorted.
Well,
they don't know that we're going to make them all perform because it's going to be like
they don't know this.
DIY.
I had an idea for my last PIP assessment. I turned it into a musical. And she stopped me like 6-7 minutes into my assessment, said, no, it's all right, don't need to see any more. And on my way out, I took some of the really, really bad artwork on the walls, like inspirational pieces. I did get my PIP still.
You got it then?
Yes.
Higher rate everything, huh?
Higher rate care, but not the mobility. But yeah. So I thought, I started off with Culture Club. Do you really want to hurt me? Do you really want to make me cry? I think she could see where it was going to go.
Dolly, please, can I come to your next assessment, please?
Oh, guess what? I've got an ongoing one. She said, I'm going to put in your notes that you can't be assessed again. Oh, come, yes, let's do it.
Brilliant.
Or I could come to somebody else's assessment and do my second song, which I didn't get a chance to do.
Oh, yeah, I want to see that musical. Do it now.
I can't remember it. I've written. See, I've got a dodgy memory. No, I can't remember it. But any suggestions will be helpful. I will take any song with suggestions on and perform that for anyone who wants me to go to the assessment with them. But yeah, it's really you don't have to have another assessment. Yes. But as well.
You must be the only person they've ever said to, please don't come back.
I should get a T-shirt done saying that, innit?
Yeah. So again, just we're coming up to our little break now. So once again, Dolly, thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you a bit more on the panel.
That's awesome. Lovely to finally meet you.
Yes.
Yes, I can see our twinkling eyes have met, and thinking, oh, let's do something.
Now I know why we've been kept apart so long. So thank you, and we'll speak to you again in a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Dolly, for that. We've got now we've got a 30-minute break. So what time are we on now, Michael? Back for 2:15, everyone. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're going to be starting shortly, so if people want to settle down, that would be settle down. I feel like a school teacher for saying that. But I've realised that there's been some new people in the audience that have joined us. So I'm Anis. I'm going to be comparing the rest of the event. And welcome to the People's History Museum if you've only just joined us. Are you all right, then? Next up, we have a panel with Anne Plumb, Dolly Sen, Colin Hambrook. I have to picture of a big hand because I keep getting people's surnames. And Dr. China Mills, who I saw on a Zoom recently. And then the person that's going to be asking all the questions, MC, I think it's called, I don't know what it's called. The interviewer is Dennis Queen. Thank you.
MC Dennis Queen on the T-shirt mic. I'm going to pass this along. I've got a mic on the T-shirt. Hello everyone, welcome to our fantastic panel. I'm kind of a bit starstruck. It's a bit difficult sitting this near so many people who have such amazing histories in activism and also in arts and activism. So, so yeah, we've got China, we've got Colin, we've got Dolly, and we've got Anne. I'm just going to start by saying hello to you first, actually. Anne, hiya. Long time. It's been a long time. Easily. And I mean, Anne, I'm going to ask you in a minute a bit more about some of your work, but to me, you're just this very famous activist who always has had kind of critique on how we join together as movements, and I think that's, so I'm a bit starstruck, because I'm like, it's the Anne, oh my gosh. So, oops, I'm just throwing my mic set around. Apologies to
There's
Alex.
no cup of coffee.
1 second. Thanks, Michael. Michael's brought me tea and water. I'm basically powered by tea. So, Anne, I'm going to start by asking you something that I think is really important. So, a lot of the time, in the disabled people's movement, we don't particularly talk about different impairments or different conditions, but one of the things that's really been important while that disabled people's movement has been growing is that activism within impairment-specific communities has actually grown alongside that. And some of it's quite new, so people in the neurodivergent community are kind of gathering together now and they're doing specific activism. But for survivors, that's something we've done for a really, really long time, Anne. So, and what I wanted to ask you about is, and I'm going to go back to your notes here because I don't want to get this wrong. Because my question is about movements. So, where are we? So I'm going to ask the question you helped us build, Anne. So, why do survivors attach importance to their identity as survivors, so all of us, and continue to engage with issues that have historically engaged us in particular, while still seeing it as important to be joining in with others where our concerns are shared, like we have here? So we've got survivor movement artifacts alongside disabled people's movement artifacts, you know, in equal importance. So yeah, do you mind talking a little bit about that? Because I think it's a good way to set the scene today.
It might be helpful to say where the definition of mental health system survivor, how I came to identify as a mental health system survivor. And this was being shown in 1986. I was shown a definition that came from a group of international mental health system survivors who were actually a subgroup of the co-counselling community. Now, I didn't know anything about co-counselling, and I didn't join the co-counselling community. But I'd just like to say, take out one or two things as they define being a mental health system survivor. So the first word they said, these are just some mental health system survivors are people who are neither crazy nor mentally ill, nor genetically distinguishable from anyone else. We are and always have been human. Then they said, we've been victimized by the mental health system because of our hurts and hurts of other people. So that's where the co-counselling kind of comes in. And then they said, because of our trying to get help in the only ways and places we know of, because we belong to certain oppressed groups, or refuse to fulfill some of society's prescribed roles, or protect the wrongs of society. And it says, we became involved in the mental health system, and our bodies and lives have been damaged and constrained by the system. So here, to me, we were as political as was the disabled people's movement, and we're not always seen as being, that political. A simpler definition, and maybe a bit softer, came from the Survivors Speak Out, where one of the people who set up Survivors Speak Out said, we decided on the name because as survivors of the mental health system that eroded our confidence and dignity, and survivors of difficult life situations that took us into the system. And Peter Campbell, who was very involved with, a mental health system survivor as well, and Survivors Speak Out, he said that he was caught up in a mental system more complex and deep-rooted than services alone. And this comes to yours about alliances. To me, there's important distinctions between the disability movement and mental health movement, and of the mental health movement getting subsumed within the disability movement. Hence my point about identity, of being a mental health system survivor. But there are two important points of difference. And the first is the word impairment. So this goes to the Union of the Physically Impaired Against Segregation, and my husband was a member of the UPS. The word impairment, absolutely central to mental health discussion is, are we impaired? So even if you put the word disabilities in, this difference is not being emphasized. And if you look at the legislation, in the UK, then, as long as you're disabled, as long as you have a psychiatric diagnosis. And also, if you fit the category, that you're mentally impaired. And it's not just the legislation here. To me, it's a problem because it's also there in the UN Convention. We are there, Article 1, who are we? Mentally impaired. So this becomes for me a problem. The second one is the history. So if you look at our history, and I would see myself as a survivor archivist, then we go back to what some people have said is the 1600, the petition of the poor distracted of Bedlam. And then if we go 1845, we get the alleged lunatic friend society. And they were active for 30 years, which includes being politically activist. There was the Lunacy Reform Society, which was someone who was imprisoned by her husband for her spiritual beliefs. Taking a big leap to when my archive, because I have an archive of material, it's a personal ear to the ground, I call it, 1970 onwards. I have a catalogue there which, if you look at it, is fairly substantial. So again, the point is, we have both a significant history, but also activism from the 1970s is substantial. And I could mention I mentioned, I think I have a couple of things. One is our rights in mental hospital. And this was the Manchester Mental Patients Union, late 1970s, but in cooperation with some other Manchester organisations and Big Flame. 1986, we would have the Hackney Mental Health Action Group with a charter for people in mental distress, but explaining that distress it's not all-encompassing. So it's not inadequate. It's inadequate to some extent, but it was a challenge to being described as mentally ill. In other words, the impairment. And that was also taken up by Lambeth Link and Islington Forum in London. It was then a lot of activism around the mental health legislation. And then we come to the convention, and here it becomes particularly, well, I suppose here to mention my position that I have an article in that which says, UN Convention, out of the frying pan into the fire, which is difficult because there were prominent voices representing mental health in the drawing up of the convention. But to me, this was libertarian, neo-liberalism, liberalism, can't say it. So that's the kind of stuff that's behind my position.
That's just breathtaking, Anne, as well, just to hear. I didn't realise how far back our history goes as survivors of mental health systems, and how long people have been doing activism together, which is kind of exciting to hear that. It's awful that it's had to be happening. But sounds to me like there are definitely some areas where perhaps what the disabled people's movement might ask for don't necessarily coincide with what survivors might ask for ourselves. And would any of our guests like to comment on that, where things diverge a little bit? Oops. I'm going to keep throwing my mic. Yeah, go for it.
That's very interesting, Anne. I describe myself as having been disabled by psychiatry, because my life was very much defined from when I was a child by psychiatry and what society puts upon you as soon as you get that label as a loony or as mad, then immediately there are barriers. And going through psychosis is a very intense experience that colours who you are, I think, for the rest of your, for the whole of your life. Not that you necessarily go through always experience, you're kind of prone to those kinds of experiences. I think that ableism is very much rooted in every fabric, every aspect of society, and those barriers are there because of ableism, because the school system, family system, the political system is always supporting those ableist structures. And so for me to be disabled by psychiatry means that I can kind of assert my identity without kind of falling into that trap of impairment, because my brain doesn't work in the same way as everyone else's. Because that's a really important point, that we are not impaired because we go through mental crises. That doesn't mean that we are mentally ill. That because as soon as we define ourselves as an illness, then the way that we think, who we are, is colonized by ableist society.
I could just make one point on that. I agree with all the barriers and everything. The one distinction I make is that our emphasis is what took us into the system in the first place, whereas much of the disability focus is on what happens after we've been, once we've got that label, hence the importance of stigma and discrimination. And so I see that as a fundamental difference. We don't talk that much as a disabled person. It doesn't do to say, what's your disability? Or how is it you've come to be in a wheelchair? You don't get that kind of conversation there. But also on this, I'd like to mention, Peter Campbell again, who said on this, we can all march together, and this would be today, particularly under benefits and cuts. But we don't have to march under the same banner.
Yeah, where we have different priorities, isn't it?
There might be this focus, and there might even be there might even be a conflict on it. And consent is one. Special services is another. Getting rid of the so-called insanity plea, that's another. Intervention is another. Is there no circumstances where anyone should intervene? And to use a personal example here, I was at uni. I went to a folk concert, enjoyed it, and then I stayed there. I didn't move, and I was totally non-communicating. So then it comes time for the caretaker to knock up. So what does he do with me? I've come on my own. I've no identification. I'm not speaking, and I'm not moving. So I'll leave it there, you know. I mean, what actually happened is, you know, I ended up on the psychiatric ward, but it's a question if it's assumed that all of us can, in all circumstances, explain what our needs are, or even what we consent to, because I had no dealings with psychiatric services prior to that. And I was in what they would call a catatonic state, and I was also psychotic, in inverted commas. I call it psychotic. So consent, I think, is not as straightforward as it may be for people with physical impairment.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you. So I'm going to bring the conversation over to China now, so bringing everything right up to date. So part of your work with the Deaf Spy Welfare Project is recording people we've lost because of things that have happened within the welfare system. And I just wondered how you in fact, let me start by saying, can you tell everyone what the Deaf Spy Welfare Project is? Let's start there, and then I'll move to the question in a minute.
Of course I can. Thank you, Dennis. And so, okay. So the Deaf Spy Welfare Project, I guess, was born because I had been involved in activism led by disabled people, highlighting the violence of the welfare system for quite a long time, and knew that it had largely been disabled people at the forefront of showing the connections between welfare reform, let's say from 2008, but actually this can go much further back, and harms, especially for disabled people, and people's deaths, including people's suicides. So I'd also done research into that also for a few years. So I maybe nearly 3 years ago, very tentatively, slightly nervously, as a bit of a fangirl, reached out to John Pring, who's the editor of Disability News Service and a disabled journalist, and said to him, look, I've been hearing a lot from disabled people when we're at protests, etc. There's so much evidence about the connections between people's deaths and welfare reform, but that people want that to be brought together, but on their own terms, I suppose. So a kind of database, but questioning a bit what counts as evidence officially as well. And I didn't know what would happen, and John replied the same day and said, yes, I want to do that with you. And probably since then we've exchanged emails almost every day, so apologies to John about that. But that's when the Deaf Spy Welfare Project was born, I suppose, through that collaboration. And I knew I couldn't do that project, particularly without John, because he has over a decade of not only as an investigative journalist covering the links between welfare reform and people's deaths, but he's also been a major activist, really, and part of us being able to tell that story. Oh, yeah. So he's submitted so many freedom of information requests, been in so many spaces that sometimes I think of it as a kind of relentless but quieter form of resistance in a way, and has revealed so much through freedom of information requests, through appeals, etc. about, especially what the Department for Work and Pensions, the DWP, about what they know about the connections between their policies and people's deaths. So we, as a core part of the project, and there's lots of threads to it, and I can talk about lots of them, but we wanted, first and foremost, to build what we call a timeline, but you could call an evidence base or a database, which brings together all of these documents that show these links. Some of them are DWP internal documents. Some of them are prevention of future deaths reports, which have been there for absolutely years, but no one knew about them. And often it was John or and other disabled people exposing those, as well as the reports that the DWP themselves, the investigations they do into people's deaths, which has been a major battle to even release redacted versions of those. Most families have never seen the investigations the DWP do into their loved one's death. So we wanted to bring... We knew those documents were there, but they are all over the place. They're hidden in plain sight. They're buried in bureaucracy, often online. We wanted to bring them all together so that it could be a kind of public tool, I suppose, and resource to really show that how much evidence there is.
Yeah.
And I think what it does in making it as a resource, and I should say, so now we've got an accessible website of the timeline, which has just launched, so only just last week. So our process was that John and I put together a kind of initial draft, and then we worked with the brilliant Rick Burgess, who sat over there, and the wonderful Dolly Sen, who sat here, and the brilliant Ellen Clifford, who's on the steering committee of Disabled People Against Cuts, DPAC, as well as with Nick Dilworth, who had decades of experience as a welfare rights advisor. And built this resource that we then released for public consultation, and anyone and everyone gave us feedback on that, including feedback that really shifted the parameters of it, and we were very open to quite critical feedback about it. And now the sort of, I don't want to say final version, because I think of it as like a living document or a living archive, and there is a way for people to submit to it anything that's missing from it. But the version that we have now has been created into an accessible website by the brilliant Access Power Visibility Collective, and has just launched. And so, yeah, I suppose what we, as well as just making all the documents available, kind of, they're in chronological order, but you can also search for specific things that you might want to. So there's different ways of navigating it, okay? What I think it really shows is absolute evidence that the Department for Work and Pensions have been warned for years. In fact, even before introducing some of the policies, especially things like the work capability assessment, that people said there was going to be harms.
Yeah, their own think tanks, I believe, was it not?
And their own pieces
That's some
of
of the
research.
evidence.
And often this evidence is hidden in like reports that are named things like research report number 278. You know, it's a real labour to trawl through all of these to find these key pieces of information which show that there are going to be deaths, that it's going to kill people.
That they knew beforehand.
They knew beforehand, and they certainly knew as people did start to die.
Yeah.
And I think also what me and John have been thinking about together is it shows the sort of slow violence of these policies, like that slow bureaucratic violence. Because often a policy might get introduced, and then it will be for years afterwards that harm continues, it's cumulative, and can eventually result in people's deaths. And the DWP absolutely weaponise that delay, because then they're able to say, oh, but how could you ever prove that our policies caused that person's death? And you know, they're right in the sense that suicide is always complex, and it may not be that there's a single cause, but something can really make someone's life unlivable, right?
Absolutely, and there's a list of things, especially if you're dealing with distress or dissent, which is often what ends up happening for everyone who's dealing with the DWP. If they didn't start off with distress about something, usually by the end of the process, you've got it. So as well, I think they kind of cause impairment by the way they go about things. And they must know, I think this is the real key element as well, that evidence showing that they knew before some of this stuff happened, that they've been getting warned by their own professionals, the people they hire, since before, because like we were saying before, like you can raise awareness, but what is really important is that we understand that this is on purpose, it's not a mistake. This is how the system is meant to work. The DWP, actually a lot like the psychiatry system, they are both designed to work in a certain way, and they both achieve their own outcome in the way they want, but it's not, but it actually causes active harm, like you say, and the record keeping is so important. We haven't had much of that. I think you're right, actually, to kind of bring John Pring into the conversation. John Pring has kept records of so much since, I swear, the disabled Stone Age or something. But he's like the only person that's got record of all the protests we've ever done. And I really think if something's going on, John sniffs it out, he records it, he publicises it. So it means we've always got somewhere to go. Certainly when with down protests, for example, that would often be completely ignored by the press, John would always be there for every single one. So you've always got a link to, and yeah, he must have masses of evidence from all the FOIs. But I think it was really important that people's names, and again, like the work that Dolly's been doing, that people's names are brought into this as they are on the Deaths by Welfare site, that we remember these are, each is an individual person, they're not a statistic. But like you say, it accumulates in all these little separate pockets. So for you to be able to get the overview is really important, isn't it?
And that, I think that speaks to something we've all through, right from the beginning of the project, we've really wanted to hold that everybody, that when we talk about deaths, that those are all individuals that had lives, that had joy, you know, things that brought them joy and sadness and grief, and but it's also important to hold that alongside like a scale of harm, and I think that's when you start to talk about sort of numbers of deaths, but not to ever lose sight of either of those, I suppose. But I think one of the things that I've learned from co-creating the timeline is that I think it's quite common, and I do it too, or I'm trying not to anymore, but I have done, is talk about the harms and people's deaths as a result of mistakes in the system or as flaws in the system. And actually, as I've been putting this evidence together, I'm like, this isn't a flaw. This is a feature of the system, not a book. Yeah.
It's on purpose. So that is the hardest bit to take. Yeah. That's why it can be easier to not acknowledge that in our work. But I think all of our activism has to acknowledge that. The same way as within survivors movement, we are constantly acknowledging the harm that is being done to us by the psychiatry system. Or for some of us lucky enough who are like next generation, we've managed to avoid the psychiatry system because of the work that our colleagues have done before us. And that's certainly, excuse me, sorry, I keep whacking my mic. That's certainly been my experience, which I'm really grateful for. Colin, I'm going to bring you in here as well, because we're talking, so I'm talking about now records and how it's really important that we keep these different timelines. So you are the chief editor at Disability Arts Online. Yeah. Obviously, I know the history of Disability Arts Online, but I think it's another space where a lot of record keeping is kind of going on, of what we've been doing as a community. Would you tell us a little bit about that and the archiving that you'll be doing at some point?
Yeah, well, I might start by talking about the work that I've got in the exhibition.
Oh, yes.
The Dirge of the Brickmen, because that is kind of key work of art in my sort of internal history. That was I made that painting when I was at college. I was lucky enough to get to Dartington, which was a college that really encouraged you to do socially engaged practice.
Oh.
And the Dirge of the Brickman it's a 4 foot by 4 foot painting that shows the mad institutions as these temples of greed consuming people's lives, supported by a line of state, the police, red brick bureaucrats with briefcases who are guarding, and it's an illuminated manuscript. It's a contemporary illuminated manuscript with a poem that's central to it. And around the poem are these red brick bully boy psychiatrists who are turning the psychiatric fodder into victims. And I presented that at the final degree show and everything. And what was clear to me was that that the work was kind of appreciated for its form, but nobody wanted to talk about what the fuck it was about.
The meaning behind
it. And I'd been involved with the campaign against psychiatric oppression, and it was one of several paintings that came out of being lucky enough to meet Eric Irwin and Frank Bangay and Peter Campbell, and that caucus of survivors in the 80s who were pushing at the psychiatric system to change it. And for me, it was like, well, that was a key for me I was involved in the London Disability Arts Forum and a print magazine there, but it was like, we've got to create a space for people to share their experience and their voices. So that was why I set up Disability Arts Online as a space where people could find some solidarity and support and recognition that our lives, our experiences of being marginalized and disabled, being pushed to the corners, is something that when we share it, we can come together, and we can overcome those barriers. Certainly, and also one of the key things about ableism is that it gets in your own life, in your own head, and we have to work it out for ourselves. What internally, especially when you've been through extreme mental experiences, we have to work it out how it's not us, it is society, it's what society is putting on us. And so Disability Arts Online is also about a very nuanced conversation. It's because there's no kind of I think one of the key problems with the left and the history of the left is that sort of very black and white kind of binary thinking. And Disability Arts Online is Tao. It's the Tao Te Ching. It's the path. It's the middle way. It's an inclusive voice. It's a voice that can encompass opposing voices, voices that don't necessarily chime. And it's really important, I think, to develop that sense of solidarity and connection, and the arts is something that can do that, and also crossing identities has become more and more important to Disability Arts Online in more recent years. understanding intersectionality, and that, you know, we're not in this silo or that silo or the other silo, that we can join together in understanding our oppression and challenging it.
And not just, I think we're doing more now is acknowledging some of our differences in a way we didn't used to within the disabled people's movement, and in a way that's valuable, and in a way that we probably ignored Anne trying to tell us a lot of years ago. But it turns out Anne was right, so that there is this need for both, you know, not just to be swallowed into one big group. So there's an archive being developed at Disability Arts Online, isn't there? And is that from all the versions of the website, or is it more of a general archive like the one we have here?
It's from all the different versions of the website, going back to when I first set it up in 2004, and so it contains an archive, and we're in the process of refreshing the website, presenting a newly launched website at the beginning of next year. Exciting. And that will contain a resources section, which kind of helps to highlight where lots of archives are living, and, you know, it's a key research tool in that sense.
That's brilliant. So, and again, it's really on topic for being here in the museum, you know, where we're talking about history. And moving forwards now, we're going to ask people to talk about a little bit. Dolly, I'm going to come back to you again. So we talked a little bit about the future of your activism. Where do you see the future of activism around these issues going in a more general sense?
That's a good question. I think at some point people will understand, I mean, unless it's for a very specific local issue, things like petitions and kind of more like passive armchair activism is probably does more harm than good, actually. And that you have to really participate as a human, you know, full human being, and you're going to have to stand with, you know, people you might not like, but you're fighting a kind of similar enemy. I think because things, to me, are getting worse. And I say to people, do you really want to grow old on a burning, really painful planet? Because I don't. And so I will fight every day to ensure that doesn't happen, or at least kind of, you know. And I think we also need to find ways of kind of dissolving people's denial of what's happening, you know, due to the environment with disabled people, with, you know, poor working class people. There is this denial and need to kind of melt away. I think some of the tactics of the past we could use, but some we have to come up with new ideas, basically. I think we have to, because we're in the point of, you know, human history, not just let alone disabled history. We have to do something. And singing culture club songs can only go so far.
Come a chameleon. Sorry.
Let's come on to this environment, relating to the environment issue. And I'm going back here to a film that was a documentary of 1986, We're Not Mad, We're Angry, which can be viewed, YouTube. And, you know, someone says there that what the kind of psychiatrist said is, just stop watching the news. But I think here that a major, with many, many people, where you end up, you know, within the psychiatric system or with these symptoms that become diagnosed of mental illness, is concerns about society, the planet, and of feeling alienated, particularly my generation, alienated, in these views. But that was the answer you would get. It was not seen as having anything to do with being severely depressed or even psychotic, because my psychosis related to that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Anne, I was going to ask you a question as well, sort of about the future, but also relating to the past. What are the things that you think are really important that we bring forward with us as we're going into that future?
Well, I think things changed a lot in 2000. And I mentioned something to Colin here, because I got a quote of Colin's from 1994. And it's in an article of mine, so as well. But, in listening to what you're saying now, and I think this indicates a change that has occurred in terms of integration and cross-sectionality, because I think your position may have changed slightly from this quote. So this was in Dale, 1994, and it related to an exhibition of yours, and the conversation must have come up. Conversation, must have come up, and you say, you talk about, you mention the gulf that exists between issues that surround the disability movement as opposed to issues which underlie the focus for the mental health system movement, which, is one of my things I feel strongly about. But I found it very interesting that, things that Colin's talking about now reflect the changes from this period, 1994. And part of that was the disability movement also becoming more visible, and also all these other areas of oppression, and also a view of, you could interpret disabled as anyone who's oppressed by the barriers of society. So you could use it in that sense without having a particular focus on mental health conditions or physical disabilities. So that to me would be, along with, of course, the immense growth, access to the internet, and social media, which is phenomenal compared to, what we might have had access to or heard about before this growth in social media.
Talking of quotes by Colin, one of my favourite quotes ever about protest, I don't know if you remember writing it, but I might get a word wrong, but you said, protest is the purest form of love in a world that's hurtling towards its own demise. And, whenever I want to flag, I just remember that. So thank you, Colin.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, Colin.
I think I wrote that in response to Inside, your film, if I remember rightly.
Oh, cool. Nice one.
Can I just ask, Colin, have you changed your position much? Have you, well, obviously you have changed your position since 1994. Perhaps you could explain the difference from 1994 to 2023.
I think one of what you're referring to, the exhibition, was an LDAF exhibition called How We Like It. And I submitted some work that got shown, and some fantastic artists, people like Nancy Willis, Tony Heaton were in that exhibition. It was a brilliant exhibition. But I had some qualms about the exhibition title, because from a disability, from an impairment point of view, it was a challenge to the idea that impairment was a bad thing. And it was saying, we like it from, you know, we don't want to be cured. That was the meaning behind it. But for me, coming from a mental health survivor perspective, it was, as you pointed out in your introduction, that impairment kind of acceptance of being impaired, it diminishes, as someone from a survivor background, it diminishes your identity. My position on that hasn't really changed, but what has changed is a kind of deeper sense of the value and importance of the social model of disability, and how that can relate, that can be imbibed by people marginalised from a survivor background. That when we talk about barriers, when we talk about the way that bodies and minds are colonised by an ableist society, that gives us a premise to kind of affirm who we are, I believe. So I don't think my position has necessarily changed. It's just become a bit more kind of nuanced.
Yeah, and I think the conversation has become a lot more nuanced in recent times as well. Like, I hope, so a bit more room for movement, and that's part of our work becoming more intersectional overall. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is that perhaps in earlier times when I was first in the movement, the way we talk about ourselves is very depersonalized, and that's quite different to how it might be in the survivors movement as well, so from the disabled people's movement. And I think that we're changing that a bit. We're repersonalizing how we talk about ourselves as individuals, not just a disabled person, but also maybe a person with a gender, and a person with or without a religion, and a person with or without a person who is or isn't LGBTQI, or we're a person who is white or brown or black. We have to start, and I think in earlier times in the movement, it was so important that we pulled away from the idea that everything was individually to do with us, that at the same time we kind of depersonalized ourselves without really meaning to. And I think what's happening now is that it's kind of going back the other way now. And so that might be, I don't know if that's also affected how your view has become more, kind of more nuanced and more complex. It's certainly affected how my views have over the years. And I mean, I would say I'm a staunch believer in the social model, but at the same time, one of the things that when I'm trying to talk to other people about, especially when we're talking about impairment, is that, you know, we mean impairment or the thing that society regards as impairment. And that's the same thing that we're talking about. So we don't have to necessarily accept the concept of having an impairment. But at the same time, like you say, Colin, it's been really important to try and prove that that's not a bad thing, that it's okay if you do have an impairment. It's tricky though, isn't it? Because I suppose as survivors, a lot of what's being called our impairment is the part of us often that isn't okay. So there's like a contradiction there, isn't there? But I mean, I certainly think, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think this sort of growing into a more intersectional way of viewing things, a more complex way of all of us regarding ourselves has got to help. In the disabled people's movement at least. So China, I'm going to come to you for a minute. So again, sort of talking about the future, sort of where is the project that you're doing, where is that heading, and how can people support that project that you're doing, the fight back that you're involved in at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess for me, some of these conversations to connect to what we've been talking about are also ones about how we understand our relationship to the state. And I don't think this has to be one or the other, and I'm not going to try and trap myself into a binary position on this, but for sure some of the people I work with on the Deaths by Welfare project, I think are still quite reliant on state machinery. Like a lot of people would like there to be a big independent inquiry about benefits-related deaths.
Mm-hmm.
I could totally support that and see the value in that. But I can also really see and think it's important to hold other ways of imagining justice and how things might be that are beyond the state. And I always think about, we've got a series of 5 podcast episodes as part of the project, which you can access online, and they're translated into BSL and they're captioned, so they're not audio only. And actually Rick and Dolly and lots of people feature on these. But one conversation that this reminds me of is a conversation between me and John Pring and Imogen Day, who's the sister of Philippa Day, who died in 2019 because of the benefit system. And Imogen talks about, dismantling what we now call the Department for Work and Pensions and building something completely new and different that has disabled people at the heart of that. So I think holding that in our relationships to the state is really important. And I think disability justice, particularly thinking about some of its, I don't like origin stories, but some of its origins, led by queer people of colour who are disabled, where there seems to be a bit less of a kind of solid distinction around physical impairment, perhaps, and what we might call distress or mental health, and a big focus on cross-movement solidarity, collective access, connected liberations. I think there's something really important there, and I think we have really intentionally tried to ground the Deaths by Welfare project within our understanding of and as a way of practicing and doing disability justice. And cross-movement solidarity is something that I think, so we've got an exhibition at the moment which very much takes inspiration from the exhibition here and has some of the same artists. Dolly Sen's film screening will be next week. And some of the hearts that you were talking about from your brilliant piece of protest art. We also have Vince Law's Death Shrouds, which I think are just so powerful in relationship to showing that link between welfare policy and people's deaths. So that exhibition runs in Brixton in London for a month, and we have a whole series of events as part of what we're calling the Rehearsing Freedoms Festival. So the idea that we need to practice for and be in rehearsal for the worlds that we want to see, and that should be grounded in many different people's, very much including disabled people's resistance and defiance in relation to state violence, but not stop only there with that critique, if you know what I mean, but really start to think, well, what is it that we want? Like, what are the worlds that we're dreaming of and that we would like to collectively build together? So that's a big part of that work, and for me a real reason why it's so important that the Deaths by Welfare project is run from the organisation Healing Justice London, which very much is very much a part of that kind of cross-movement solidarity and cross-disability solidarity, and actually moving away perhaps a bit from single-issue organising, even though that can be really important, and recognising our liberations as much more connected to each other's.
Yeah, and I think we're really seeing that happening more as well, this cross-movement solidarity. I'm thinking particularly of a protest that happened quite near here, quite recently, sort of that was again really kind of collaborative, so disabled people got involved in supporting a protest about trans rights. So we had Manchester Disabled People Against Cuts come in to join Manchester Trans Rise Up and a whole coalition of other groups, and that was kind of amazing. And that community building is something that the state can't stop. They can't stop us from doing that, and I agree. I think that's where a lot of power lies. So I'm going to pinch something you said to give everyone a closing word, because you were talking about what did you say just now about our dreams for the future?
So I'm going to ask each of you, what would be one thing that would be included in that for you, China? The question that you're going to be asking everyone else, I'm asking you, just to be awkward.
One thing. Well, I think in terms of, if we're thinking deeply about cross-movement solidarity right now, then I would say freedom for Palestine.
Go ahead, Colin.
Dreams for the future. I think it's to be one of Dolly's minions, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I just would like to see more creative protest, more imagination going into the, protest with more fun in it as well. I think actually, but there's such a need to, like Dolly says, things are getting worse, getting harder, and I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And Dolly, how about you?
I'd like to have more minions, but that's been talked about. And what I say to people is like, we are living in dark times, and what I'm trying to do through my activism and art is paint stars, and I just want people to do that in, whatever way they can. So, it overtakes the darkness. So, believe it or not, what's happening in Palestine is connected to what's happening to disabled people, what's happening to indigenous people under the environment. It is all connected. And the more that people see that is my hope, really.
Oh, thank you. And Anne?
I had hopes in the 70s, 80s and 90s because I was also involved with my husband's activities in the Union of the Physically Impaired and GMCDP. I have no hope now. But a change that I would like to see is to stop the warfare that's in mental health, that's in part encouraged by the professionals and a few individuals to have psychiatry here and anti-psychiatry there. Whereas I want to see more respect and understanding and listening to the different positions. And where possible to search to build bridges, not to seek to divide us when we actually have so many experiences, both personal and within the psychiatric system, and then we get stuck on whether we think it's okay to take medication or we should be trying to come off it. I would much rather see a greater coming together here rather than the division, which is particularly perpetuated actually by the professions, although it's within our movement as well.
Yes. Ooh, yes.
What would you like to see, Dennis?
What would I like to see? You can't turn the questions back on me now, Dolly. What would I like to see? I think it's usually the same thing that I would always like to see, which is just we've all got to keep loving each other really hard as we can, and we've just got to keep teaching each other how to fight back. That's always been my one thing driving me through all my activism. Is about us supporting each other to fight back, and that's however you can fight back, whether it's building a website, whether it's doing research, whether it's lobbying, whether it's civil disobedience, whether it's arts. Just be there and fight back with each other. That'd be my wish. Oh, thanks for asking me. No one's asked me a question all day. So all that remains now then is for me to say thank you to our amazing panel, who I could easily talk to all day. So I'm going to thank again China Mills. and Colin Hambrook, and Dolly Sen, and Anne Plumb. Thanks so much. And I will now pass you back to our lovely compere, Anis.
Thank you. Do stay on stage, it's fine.
Okay.
The microphone's over here.
Who's got them? Yeah, thank you everyone for a wonderful panel. And we've got a 20-minute break, and after that we're going to have poetry. Usually when I compare, I often do a summary, but because of time. But I think because of the topics covered around intersectionality, or another term, multiple oppressions, I think what we've learned today about the disabled people's movement is how, you know, the anti-psychiatry movement predates disability activism, and I'm so glad that at the Nothing About Us Without Us exhibition, and deaf and disabled people's organisations across the country are welcoming to people with, you know, chronic conditions, and also mental health, and recognising this collective movement, and that not in the disabled people's movement, we rarely ask our peers about their impairments, because we work on collective actions to break down those barriers. And I'm so proud as one of the 4 curators and our steering group and everybody that was involved in the exhibition, that we've included mental health and the importance of how society and the psychiatry profession disables us. Thank you. Hi everyone, we're ready to start the last session, and we've got some poetry for you, so come on everybody.
I can't do things that everyone can do. But I can't do things that nobody can do. Thank you.
We've got a real professional poet here who really wants a room full of people, so I'd like to introduce Carol Batton.
Yeah!
Who's going to do poetry.
Carol Batton. Thank you. This about the mic. We're being on the net potentially to TikTok, I think. My life is built around an incomplete pause. Loony alert! Loony alert! Alert Loonies on stage. Alert Loonies on stage. I hide behind my label. Manic, depressive, psychosis. When I'm behind my label is all you see. Look at me, peeping out at you. Be kind to me. I will come out to you. Don't do your best. Don't do your best. Do a little less. A little dark, but I've seen darker. I've seen places where there's no light at all. A little wet, but I've seen wetter. I've seen the places where the floods take all. Maybe I'm mad, as the psychiatrist says. Most of my friends say I'm sane as can be. But most of my friends are mad like me. I'm not a snowdrop, really. I'm a crocus. Come up early. Come daffodils, sit near me, and let's pretend it's spring. The psychiatrist is very clever. If he doesn't understand something, he medicates it. Listen, the mad makes sense. Among the words you do not hear, we speak pain loudly. I can cope, dear psychiatrist, with everything, except the fear of you on top of it all. Paranoid is when people are irrationally scared of me. Jam, tart, and custard. Antidepressant. Baked potato. Mood stabilizer. What answer to a perfect prayer, wherever darkness may? I dwell within that sanctity, the blackening of the day, and it may form a sanctuary. I pray, and am received for all the things they did to me, the things I once believed, and all abiding daylight hurts. But the blackening gives light. I pray a little, and received by the blackening of the night. Ascot, they're attention-seeking. All of them. Attention-seeking, set the mentally ill. Ignored about, but only seeking recognition of our plight. Dressing up in clothes and jobs, exaggerating what they think. All of them, attention-seeking, set the mentally ill. Why is it when she's only screaming? You call the girl attention-seeking. Mental illness is like a broken leg. There's only one difference. A broken leg exists. When people fall off the edge, will we punish them or catch them? The ocean is leaking into the sky, which can't hold the water and has to cry. If the question is madness, what is the answer? Let the question go past us. Allow us some madness. Born of the past hurts, innocent madness. We are the daisies denied the sun. We are the maybes born for a purpose. And we are misunderstood, especially by those who take our blood. You may even like us. You might even like to meet us now that you could. Now that you could. Hello, everybody. Say hello, be friendly, be kind. There's nothing else we can do. The apricots have got in pies. I respond with my eyes. My mouth replies. Herbal tea, sipped quietly. Even this won't quiet me. Leaves blowing round and round. Are they blown away or just round and round? They are blown just round and round and round. I believe in leaves, even though some trees look permanent winter. Nice, no more than 2 Nice biscuits a week. The weather will get tropical. We're secretly overjoyed, but when the temperature don't stop there, then we'll be annoyed. a handful of options, 90% of them drugs. One cannot do nothing. So strong drugs are something. Try them or force them if they will not have them. People look well when they're quiet. Cheer up, they won't let me be sad, so they fail to give comfort to my sadness. Acceptance being the very thing I need. Weed killer. I can't find it in the instructions. Weed killer? I know it's not for trees. I've looked everywhere for these as I've comforted the seeds. I don't know why it's needed for the murdering of these. Dear God, who created us, which of us are weeds? Extreme view. Not only should gays be banned from the army, but everybody. Using the F word. The government is up its own farce. The happiest moments of my life were when the worst moments were over. The moment she announced she was going to discuss my interpersonal skills with me, I knew she had none. Iraq war. Is my arithmetic wrong? Or is the minimum number of casualties none? What answer to, mental health difficulties are what you get if you're honest with a psychiatrist. They gave away pens and sweets to show how well the new antidepressants worked. The pens and sweets work better. Just because you don't understand me doesn't mean I don't make sense. I frightened him with his own prejudice. He dances with his dopamines. He rings around his brain. He dances with his dopamines. Yeah. They say he is insane. Grass recovers from a thought, but I'll never recover my soul from such pain. Trees can only grow leaves again, but I never recover from pain. Sharon Lewis, a musician, help me with the song a bit. I can't sing much. It's okay to be sad. It's the system that is bad. It's okay to be mad. I'm positive. The system is bad. I'm positive. I'm glad I'm positive. Sanity, I've got that one. A bird is so light against the wind. It's hard to stay steady in the sky. But if one is massively strong and big, one may not be able to fly. Caught lying twice in a day. Cried my eyes out, saying, I'm okay. A lick of pain is quick when one's insane. It's being eaten hurts. God will not ask us which film stars we met. He will ask us which beggars we knew. If the city council doesn't let the beggars beg, why can't God can let the beggars beg? Why can't the city council? You've been happy for 2 weeks. You've got clinical happiness. Right. A whale would rather be in a million feet of water than out of its depth on the shore. I become a vegetarian using cognitive behaviour therapy. If I eat meat, I just call it courgettes. I have a fear of medication. My fear becomes a consternation. They medicate me, consternation. It was only fear of medication. To you, I seem to drowning my sorrows, but my sorrows win. Nobody told me. Sorrows swim. Mania, like light, casting away shadows of doubt. Insanity, I shout you. Like busy with certain God deeds. Insanity, I need you. Like singing the song to heaven above. Insanity, I love. 2064 AD. Can I have a coffee? Is that with water? Yes. That'll be £265. Help wildlife. Well, help the wildlife neglect its habitat. Save the environment. Leave it alone. Hi, psychiatrist, how long since you last worked? 25 years. Oh, that's quite recent then. A daffodil doesn't look at the sky. It dips, it opens, then it dies. It is not aware of its own beauty. Can you do more than you can today? Today, the priority is to decide the priorities. Nothing can change except we. The world's injustice, sign support in English here, the world's injustice remains, but I can be kind. How can we hope for world peace when I can't get you to say hello in the streets? Hell is loud. Hell is loud and shouts out sins. Heaven, quietly, it wins. He's a dominant dad. It's not that he's bad, it's just that he's a dominant dad. You get dominant daughters from dominant dads. That's the main purpose of dominant dads. It's as if nobody died in the war, and just success, and just for our side, and the world just win. Is that what war is? Lies. Give blood. 1 million moderately injured people. Day dawns, dusk descends, time breaks, more than it mends. There is celandine in the hospital grounds, and the nurses ask, "Are you well?" There is celandine, flowers in the hospital grounds. But who the hell can I tell? Quietly by the blackthorn tree that everyone sees and knows, with its white, flowering, tremulous, dreamy boughs. There is celandine in the hospital grounds, but who the hell can I tell? Well, I told 1,000 people, and I'm about to tell you as well. Real desperation doesn't ask It sits there despairing, sits there just staring. How are we doing? Bit more. The job asked for a worker was all trained for job interviews. The one who lied, the shirker, she got the good news. And when a little flower fails to grow, a poet cries a dozen tears or so for what we do not know. Earthquake, the earth broke its covenant to stay forever still. Why does God, I hold her broken hand amid the carnage. Why does God ask so much of us that we are left with a feeling of failure? We have commissioned and paid for independent research. Bipolar disorder, if left untreated, can leave the patient capable of success. The whole of the Western world, it knows, God judges people by their clothes. Food label. If you can't spell it, don't eat it. An actor who applied for an acting job got it by pretending he could act. This is the funniest one, so it's going in. Do not put the yogurt on the switch card machine. The switch card machine is vegan and only eats plastic. If it tastes the yogurt and finds it fantastic, it may never return to eating our plastic. When gooses fly, they try to keep their heads out front, away from their predicament. They are winking even as they fly. Keep your head a foot ahead. Keep on going when you're dead, and flap your wings at each mistake. Another chance, another lake. Another chance, another lake, another chance. I shall acknowledge eternity, my judge. I shall acknowledge eternity and truth. As long as I shall be, I'll always have eternity. Eternity shall be my judge. Friends, they are temporary, but I have my friend, eternity. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Dennis Queen here with our closing piece. We're going to do something I've not tried before, so you're going to have to help me along. It's going to be a piece of group work. So together, we're going to close by reading a poem by Sue Napolitano together. And to lead that poem, we have just the wonderful Ben. Come on up. Ben is... So Sue's your mum, isn't she?
Sue's my mum, yeah.
Yeah. Can I sit next to you, Glow? Okay. So, bear with us. You don't all have to read the poem if you don't want to, so don't feel any pressure. But those of you who would like to join in with us, we have got copies on your tables. There's Braille as well. And thank you, Ben.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for asking me, because it's an honour. Thank you. This poem is called To Our Warriors. We have our warriors battling with society and disease. We carry our scars on our bodies and in our hearts. The deepest hurts are when we turn the knives of the oppressor against each other. We lose too many of our warriors too soon, with too many years unlived, too many battles unwon. And yet each one's fight moves us all forward, brings closer the day when the doors of all the day centres, homes, hostels, special thises and that's will clatter empty in the wind. The day when we will all be free. So rest easy, my sisters and brothers. Lie peaceful in the earth or scattered in the air. Your rage on earth blew up a storm. We will inherit your thunder, your lightning, your love. We will fight on.
Passing to Michael now. Oh, we're passing to Anis. Thank you so much, darling. And I believe, Anis, you're going to be speaking our closing words. We'll stay on, okay, yeah.
I don't want to spot the screen. Hi, everyone. This now concludes our second to last. I'm not going to say that word with the P like Michael did earlier this morning because I don't know how to pronounce it. But yeah, the day started off with Dennis having a one-to-one interview with Dolly Sen, who's in the audience. Then we had a break, and then we had a panel with Anne Plumb, Dr. China Mills, Colin, Hambrook, and Dolly Sen again. And we had some poetry by Carol Batton, and then a beautiful group reading of a poem with Sue's son, Ben. And the museum is open till 5 o'clock, and I'm happy to, I'll be around till 5 if people want to see the Nothing About Us Without Us exhibition, which closes on Monday the 16th at 5 p.m. I was one of the 4 curators there, and I'm happy to show you some of my favourite items and the ones I know about. We understand that today's themes around mental health and people losing loved ones and family members and friends to the horrible welfare system, and we realise that this can be triggering and upsetting. And I learnt a phrase during my activism, especially overseas, about I'd like to leave you better than I found you. So there are PHM staff around. Please don't go home with these difficult themes on your own. We're here to support each other, and all the love and solidarity to all the trans rights protests happening. One's happening in Bradford and Leeds today, which I couldn't be a part of. And if you're free on Monday, the 16th, from 1 till 3, we've got some more poetry. And the person next to me, Dennis Queen, who everybody seems to know, is going to be playing some music on their guitar and singing some protest songs. So please do go around to the stalls if you haven't done so. And thank you everybody for coming. And this event has been live streamed and will be available on the YouTube. In-house joke with Dennis there. So please do rewatch it, or if you had to step out and missed bits, it will be available on YouTube. Thank you so much for coming.
Just last thing, just thank you everybody who's been involved. And there's some evaluation forms at the back if you haven't been given one out already. And if you do have time to complete one, it's really helpful. So please do. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and please stick around for a chat. Right, bye-bye.